Hey everybody, welcome to Tundra Talk. Dave here. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to build a football team, and we're going to use an example of what's going to be happening tomorrow. So tomorrow is obviously Super Bowl Sunday. We have the Eagles versus the Chiefs. Now, when people are talking about how do you build a football team, they always want to start with, okay, we need to find our franchise quarterback. That's got to be the most important thing that we do. I'm here to tell you that's not the most important thing you could do. Now, quarterback is the most important position on the field, but if you're looking at a complete rebuild, just getting a quarterback is not going to cut it. Because we've seen time and time and time again quarterbacks that have an abundance of talent not succeed because they were drafted a year or two too early. For me, one of the things I look at is, you look at what the Detroit Lions are doing. And what they're doing is really the right way to build a football team. And like I said, you look at the teams that are playing tomorrow, the Eagles and Chiefs, what do they have in common? I understand, yes, there are two MVP type quarterbacks. Obviously, Mahomes won it. But what is something that both of those teams have in common? For one, both of their offensive lines have ranked very high this year, and their defensive line getting after the quarterback is 1 and 2 in the NFL as well. That is where you really need to start with building a football team. It's got to come from protecting the quarterback and getting after the quarterback. If you can't do either of those, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with building your football team. So like I said, you look at what the Lions are doing. They have put a lot of resources in that offense and defensive line. And now they have an offensive line that's Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, you have Taylor Decker out there. They have really good pieces on that offensive line, and it's a younger offensive line that's going to be around for a while. That is a way to really start to put the pieces together. And then last year, what did they do in the draft? You brought in Aiden Hutchinson, and you brought in Josh Paschal. So you got guys that could get after the quarterback. Now, I'm giving compliments. I'm a Packer fan, and I'm giving compliments to a division rival because I can understand when a team's process is the right way. So you look at these teams that are in the top 3 of the draft. You got Chicago, you have Houston, and you got Arizona. They all have major problems when it comes to protecting the quarterback and getting after the quarterback. You look at Chicago, there's a lot of talk from Bear fans that, oh my God, Justin Fields is him. He's going to be awesome. Is he though? Because we've already seen he's, for one, is struggling as a passer because he doesn't always have a lot of time to throw. And two, he's already been banged up. And the same thing goes with Arizona. Kyler Murray, a fantastic, unbelievable talent. But even these last couple of years, even before this ACL, he has missed time due to injuries because he takes a lot of shots. So they're not able to protect their quarterback. So those top 3 teams in the NFL just weren't able to protect the quarterback or really get after the quarterback. Because we've seen time and time again, if you can protect, you're going to give it a shot to win. And you don't need to have one of these generational Hall of Fame quarterbacks to be able to do it. You can get a quality quarterback that can get you a long ways just because they have a really good offensive line. Because we've seen, look at what happened to the Chiefs against the Buccaneers a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, they had so many injuries on that offensive line, they couldn't protect Mahomes, and he was running for his life, and they put up 9 points in the Super Bowl. You look at the Tom Brady team in 2007 that was going for 19-0. High-scoring offense in football. Brady threw 50 touchdowns. What happened? The Giants were able to get after Tom Brady, and they were able to hold him to 14 points, and the Giants were able to win that Super Bowl. So it comes down to you need to be able to protect the quarterback and get after the quarterback. So let's look at, well, Chicago's already got, but let's look at Houston. Houston's a team that needs a lot of work yet. They got a couple of pieces in place. Right now, you do have Brandon Cooks, who is asking for a trade. You do have Laramie Tunsil. He wants to get paid mega money, and yes, he is one of the best left tackles in football, but so I understand it. But they are barren of talent right now. You got a couple, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, Damian Pierce. John Mechie, God willing, he comes back from his cancer stronger and able to, really continue his NFL career. But there's a lot of holes in that offense, and there's a lot of holes on that defense. So when I keep hearing the Texans are looking or getting mocked quarterbacks at number 2, I'm pulling my hair out. I'm like, why? Because there is no generational quarterback in this draft class. There's really not. So there have been very few generational quarterbacks in my lifetime. You look at Trevor Lawrence was one of them. Size, athleticism, arm, pedigree, leadership, all that stuff was there. You go back to Andrew Luck, was a generational quarterback. And then you go back to Eli Manning, was a generational type quarterback. Peyton Manning was pretty much a generational type quarterback, but is he in that upper tier with the Andrew? I don't know. I mean, now we're dipping back 25 years there. But even before that was probably John Elway. So, and just because I'm saying generational quarterback, I mean, Aaron Rodgers coming out of the draft was not a generational talented quarterback. Tom Brady coming out of the draft was not a generational quarterback. There's very few of those that come around. Now they develop into those dynamic players, but coming out of the draft, unless you have a Trevor Lawrence, an Andrew Luck, a John Elway, a player like that coming out, there's no need to take a quarterback until you start putting those pieces in place first on the offensive line and the defensive line. Because in this year's draft, I do like the quarterbacks in this draft. I don't have them rated as high. I understand Bryce Young, he's got so much that you like, except for he's so small. And he's not even a thick small. He's a very lean, smaller quarterback where there are questions of how long is his durability going to be able to hold up, because you have slot corners that are bigger than Bryce Young. CJ Stroud, he's more of that prototypical pocket passer, but what is he going to do off of structure? He showed a lot of that against Georgia in the college football playoff, but at the same time, that wasn't a part of his game. Was that a necessity? He had to? Or is that something that's still developing in his game? So there's questions there. Will Levis, Udo's a talent, probably the most, gifted thrower of the football in this draft class. But there's questions about his decision making. There's no question on his toughness, size, or anything, but his decision making. Is he going to be able to develop into that really nice player? Anthony Richardson, you're talking about buying a Powerball ticket and crossing your fingers, because he's got all the talent to be the best quarterback we may ever see, or he could be one of the biggest flops we've ever seen, because there's just such a variance of where he could be, because he's so raw as a passer, but he's so supremely talented as an athlete. You need to be put in the right situation. So again, circling back to the Houston Texans, when you have struggles on the offensive line, there are a couple pieces, but there's struggles there. You don't have a lot of weapons to work with, and you don't have a defense that's going to make a lot of consistent stops. What does that equal? There's going to be a lot put on your quarterback. He's going to take a lot of punishment. And we've seen this in Houston before. David Carr was the number 1 overall pick in what was that, 2002 or 2003? One of those two. He was the first overall pick. I think it was 2003. And you could see the talent, but he just got the crap kicked out of him. Same thing with Andrew Luck. That guy could have gone down as the greatest quarterback we have ever seen. But he only played 6 or 7 years because he got beat up. And that's the same thing. If you take a quarterback way too early, you're putting yourself in a situation where that could blow up in your face in a hurry. Now, this draft class is kind of a tougher draft class to figure out, because this isn't going to go down as, in the last 10 years, this might be one of the bottom 2 or 3 drafts in the last 10 years. There's a lot of depth in this class, but the top tier elite isn't quite there. So maybe at number 2, the value isn't there to take an offensive lineman. But the value is there to take a Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. So maybe that's a route you go. Take a Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, who's ever there at number 2. I would take Jalen Carter. I think he's the top prospect in this class. And then you can come back at 12 and take that offensive lineman, and then come back at 33 and see, is there a quarterback there? Is there not? Maybe you sign a Jacoby Brissett or a player like that, and you draft, a Max Duggan or a Hendon Hooker or a player like that to develop. but you need to put the pieces in place first on the offensive line to take pressure off your quarterback so that he's got time to throw. Your running back's got lanes to run through, puts you in a much more comfortable situation. And then you put the pieces in place to get after the quarterback, because the quickest way to make stops is to pressure the quarterback, penetration. That will get them to have happy feet, trigger finger, all those fun things where interceptions, fumbles, stuff like that do happen. So again, if you're a GM, and granted, who am I to tell you? I'm just an avid football fan that watches a lot of football and sees a lot of this stuff. But if you're a GM and you're starting with a bare bones type franchise, build that offensive line first, build that defensive line and offensive line, and then you can look to add those pieces. Because you'll put yourself in a much better position when you get your quarterback, that you're going to be able to have them for that 10 to 15 year window that you're hoping to have that quarterback there. So as always, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We did a 3-round mock earlier this week. Now we're talking about how to build a football team, starting with the trenches, the big uglies in the middle. That is where you really got to build this football team. There's a lot of players I do like in this draft. There's going to be more content like this coming out. But again, make sure you subscribe. That way you get notifications as to when new videos drop. As always, have yourself a great rest of your day. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll talk again very soon.